So when I was around the time that I got diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, I just started ticking because I reminded myself I had Tourette syndrome. I forget about it up here. Around the time I got diagnosed, I got diagnosed real later, but I had it much earlier. Got diagnosed around the same time I saw this movie called Angus about a chubby kid that got bullied. He was actually named after a cow. He was actually named after a cow, and he got bullied. And there's this moment in the movie, and the same time I watch this movie, there's this moment where he's talking to his grandfather, and he says, they won't stop talking, they won't stop laughing at me, they won't stop. They're never gonna stop. And his granddad looks at him, he says, Angus, he says, a one-liner, he says, if you laugh with them, they can't laugh at you. That one line changed the trajectory of my entire life. I was a middle school kid who had been ticking for years. And it had really peaked. And I was slinging slobber all over. Like I would be on the gym floor doing push-ups and slobber would run out of my mouth. I was jerking and grunting and moaning. In the 6th grade, I had gained massive amounts of weight because of medication that took me years to lose. And I ain't losing anymore. I like to eat. I was on so much medication that the few people that remember me, I was like a ghost. My parents would cry because they thought they lost their kid forever. That one-liner changed my entire life because I began to embrace my story. It helped me embrace my story by making other people laugh at it. Cracking jokes helped my circumstances not crush me. It did. It did. Matter of fact, it has helped me navigate through, since then, tons and tons of loneliness, loss, awkwardness, and dysfunction. That one-liner actually taught me transparency, just so you know. Because like it or not, whether you can handle it or not, I am a transparent person. I am. It comes, bearing my heart and soul and expressing myself comes very naturally. It helps me find healing, and my heart is for it to help anybody that listens to me and can handle me find healing. I learned that transparency through that season. And those principles, that one-liner taught me that and so much more in that season. Fast forward to dating Angie. First thing she challenges me sometimes every day. First challenge, first conflict she ever talked to me about. We just started dating. She said, baby, and I just loved it when she went from being the baby. I'm not even going to go there, though. That's not the point. She said, baby, look, I love you're a transparent person. She said, I love you're a transparent person. I love it. She said, but it bothers me the way you were down in yourself to lift other people up. She said, it bothers me the way that you cuss yourself down to encourage other people. She said, transparency is a beautiful thing, but there is a fine line between transparency and self-deprecation. And she was like, baby, I think you've crossed the line. And it hurts my heart to see that you don't give yourself enough credit on the stage to make people feel like better about themselves. I cannot tell you what a gut punch that was for me. Because the very thing that once helped me heal and helped me grow, that helped me from junior high, go from that doped up, chubby kid to in high school, I got most unforgettable. I didn't get any girlfriends, but I became popular. I was still chubby, had Tourette's, but people liked me. The thing that helped me grow in that season began to hold me back. And I had to be honest, before I walked down a stage and became married and a full family, I had to be honest with myself that I had crossed the line. I had gotten too comfortable with cutting myself down. And honestly, there's many seasons of my life that I've not just let people, I've invited and welcomed people to do the same. She was right. But I can tell you straight up, I crack jokes on myself all the time now. But I do it from a place of confidence in who God created me to be, not coping with low confidence by cutting myself down. What healed me in one season held me back in another. I want to talk to you about the things that may have been good last season, but you've outgrown them. It saved you, but it won't serve you. It saved you, but it will not serve you. I want to talk to you about those things because it is hard. It is hard, y'all. It is some of the hardest things you will ever do is set aside the things that saved you last season but are enslaving you this season. But if you don't, you are going to stay a slave to last season. And I'm going to encourage you right now, if you haven't already, online or in person, I'm telling you, this message is for everybody in every season of life. Share this video, hashtag puberty is over, because we as a church are about to grow to the next level together, closer to God, because we are about to develop in new ways. And the only way to do that is get rid of old mindsets and old ways. Tell somebody puberty is over. Puberty is absolutely over. Lord, right now, just one more time, speak through me, speak through my craziness, because I want people to be set free. And sometimes to be set free and move forward, you've got to release some things that were good behind you, but they are holding you back ahead of. They're going to hold you back from what's ahead of you. Speak through me, speak to me. We want to grow, and puberty is over in Jesus' name. Amen. Somebody get some water. We're going to jump in this thing. Y'all ready? What saved you then can enslave you now. Okay? And what saves you now can enslave you later. What grows you in one season can shrink you in the next. Period. We're going to start out Old Testament, okay? So we love to tell the story of Joseph, right? Matter of fact, Egypt, okay? Egypt saved the nation of Israel in one season. They saved them. We know of Israel because of Egypt. They saved them in one season and made them slaves in the next. We love the story of Joseph. For those of you who don't know it, I'm going to give you the headlines. We love the story. He was a 17-year-old Israelite. His brothers were jealous of him. They sell him into slavery. And from the age of 17 to the age of 30, he lives as a slave and in prison. And from 17 to 30, God takes him to the top. You talk about starting from the bottom, now you're here. The man from 17 to 30 became the second most powerful man in the known world. It's a beautiful story. Matter of fact, when Joseph's and his brother's dad died, when Jacob is Joseph's daddy, dies, his brothers think he's going to take revenge. They think like he's going to kill us now. He's going to get revenge. Daddy's dead. And Joseph says this. We love to talk about this scripture in our personal lives, but it is true so much more. Genesis 50:20. Joseph tells his brothers in response to them being afraid, he says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for all good. Intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. And we tell that story and we get hope from it. But I want you to know that story is bigger than Joseph. God used Joseph to take Israel to Egypt. Egypt is what saved Israel. Because God used Joseph because he knew Israel, there was a famine coming, and they would have starved to death, every one of them. God led Israel to Egypt. One season, Egypt saved them. And then you turn to the next book of the Bible, Exodus. Joseph, all that generation are dead. They're dead. And Pharaoh, there's a new Pharaoh who was the top. Joseph was second to Pharaoh. He didn't know Joseph. He didn't know the story. And Israel was growing. They were just growing like in numbers. And Egypt got intimidated. So you turn over to the Bible in the next season, the next book of Exodus chapter 1. It says, so the Egyptians, they were intimidated. So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They appointed brutal slave drivers over them, hoping to wear them down with crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities of Pithom and Ramesses as supply centers for the king. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread. And the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter, forcing them to mix mortar and make bricks and do all the work in the fields. They were ruthless in all their demands. And what happens here is they still kept growing. And they started killing their babies. And this is where Moses comes along. Moses' mama was supposed to give Moses up to die. And if you don't know the story, he got Moses, weaved him weed the basket. She got Moses, weed the basket, and sent him down a river. And Moses got raised in Egyptian royalty. The same God used Joseph to lead Israel to Egypt. Also, in the next season, used Moses to lead Israel out of Egypt. Egypt saved them in one season and enslaved them in the next. And I want you to know the same God who led them to Egypt is the same God who said, it's time to go. It's time to free you from them. Tell somebody puberty's over. Puberty is over because it is the same for every one of our lives. There are things, and I mean anything, relationships, mindsets, habits that may have helped you last season, but they're enslaving you this season. It is the same for all of us. Let me tell you something. Last season, you may have been lax. You may have been able to breathe. You may have had a little more flexibility financially or with your time. It may have been an easy season. You may have been comfortable last season, and you were like, all of a sudden, crap hits the fan. See, last season was great. You were able to gather yourself. But right now, you may need to put some work in. Because you got to work the fields before you get a harvest from them. You don't get a big harvest without plowing and sowing. And some of you may be in a season that lasted. College was great, but it's time to start building what God called you to build. Single life was great, but it's time to start building what God called you to build. See, there are certain seasons that are plowing and sowing seasons. You need to work a few more hours. You want to grow closer to God? The last thing you need to come to church first. There's some people online. I need my people back. If you're my people, if you're Catalyst people, as soon as you're comfortable, you need to come back. That's great. If this is the only growth you get to God, as beautiful as what this worship team does, as beautiful as what we try to do is, if this is it, you're not going to grow closer to God. You got to put some work in. Because there's a time you got to work the field if you want to harvest from it. You got to work it. You want to grow closer to your kids getting older. You're kind of disconnected. You don't know how to grow close to them. You're arguing with them all the time. You need to take them out and get some quality time. I don't care how little time you got. And I didn't say lecture time. I said quality time. Because the only way for them to open up to you is to know that you actually want to have fun and prove to them that you were not some ornery man or woman, that you were trying to pressure them. And that's the way you do it. And you better make some time, because if you want to connect with your kids, it takes work. Tell somebody puberty's over. You want to grow closer to your wife or your husband? Man, I'm telling you, I have seen so many couples, and we have to fight it all the time. We get overwhelmed trying to build a life together, and we lose closeness with each other. How sad is it to do life together and not even enjoy each other? You don't even enjoy the person that you committed to build life with. You can build a great life. You don't even get to experience each other. Why'd you get married? You know what it takes? Time. There are times where Angie and I grieve each other, and there's times where, at best, a couple times a week, we get 15 minutes before bedtime just to talk, and it's awful, and we start grieving, and we have to make something happen. Or guess what? You may do a lot of great things together, but you don't enjoy the person that you walked an aisle and committed with. Tell somebody you got to put the work in sometimes. See, last season may have been comfortable. You may have been like, we were getting there, but what was comfortable last season has caused you to be complacent this season. And if you don't adjust, seasons change, and if you do not adjust to them, you become a slave to that season. Seasons change. Oh, some of my people, I ain't even at you yet. Some of you grinding and working so hard is robbing you. It's robbing you. It's robbing your family. And you are getting robbed the moments that matter. And I'm about to hurt somebody's feelings. Some of you, the last thing you need to do is be working more. Because I'm telling you, grinding and working hard is robbing you of moments that money can't buy. You need to downsize. You're like, no, Ben, you don't know my bills. Yes, I don't have to know your bills, because sometimes more work and putting the work in means not more job. It means rebudgeting. You need to downsize your life so that you don't miss out on it. Oh, I'm telling you, you prayed for that beautiful house. Man, you prayed for it. God gave it to you. You love it. Man, there comes a time where it is not the will of God for you to spend your life paying for a mortgage and missing moments that matter. You're going to miss everything that matters paying for a mortgage that doesn't. Let me tell you something. Your kids need you way more than what anything you can buy them. And I'm telling you, they may not like it first. And they may be like, I'm not, because you set the precedent their whole life of spending too much money on them. But they need you more than anything you can buy them. And guess what? Working dang too hard is robbing you. It may have been great in your 20s, but it's robbing you in your 30s and 40s. What built your life, that work ethic that built your life, is now breaking it down and tearing it apart. And stress is going to kill you a lot longer than, way before you end up in a grave. Oh, it was great. You were 20, you got out of college, you busted your tail. There is a time that you are going to miss it. And I promise you, you give me a budget, man, I don't know numbers, but I know what matters. It was great in last season. It's killing you in this one. It saved you then, but it will not serve you now. You were a slave to it. And the insecurities that come from the American dream has caused us to be slaves to things that may be good. You may, the housewarming party's great. You got that new car, but you're going to miss the things that matter most, and you're not going to know it until it's too late. You're not going to know it until you're not even close to your kids. And they don't even want to be a part of your life because they never even knew you. Tell somebody it saved you, but it won't serve you. It will not serve you. It will not serve you. Paul, the Apostle Paul, said, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, acted like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. College was fun. For some of you, it wasn't for me. College was fun. Those 20s were fun. Got some great stories. But living like that at 37 years old, it's killing you. It's killing you. It's a slave. You're a slave to it. You know what's fun for grown people? Winning. And I'm going to tell you what winning isn't. I'm not judging anybody. I don't even know your story. I'm telling you, for everybody under the sound of my voice, grown people like to win. And winning is not working harder on the weekends having fun than you work on the weekdays. See, people go to bed more exhausted on Sunday than Friday because they spend their life looking for fun and they miss everything. Man, the story, you got great glory stories. Grown people, you want to grow up, they need to stay stories. Stories of the unnecessary things that you did and the lessons you learned from them, not stories of the unnecessary things you're still doing and trying to learn from. Because I'm telling you, last season was fun. You got some glory stories to tell your kids, but they need to see you growing up. You need to grow up. Tell somebody puberty is over. Puberty is over. And God wants you to grow the next level, and you're going to get stuck in last season and the last level for the rest of your life until you decide to grow up. Oh, you can have all the fun in the world, but if that's all you're having, you're not winning. So Israel was in slavery in Egypt for 400 years, okay? God frees them. The Red Sea, great moment. We love to read about it. The next 40 years, they wandered in the wilderness. The 400 years of slavery was not on them. The 40 years of them living like slaves in the wilderness when God said, go take the promised land, that was on them. Your childhood, you can't use it as an excuse anymore. When you were 10, what you went through was not on you. What you're going through now is on you. You can't use your child. I'm not saying all of it. Life happens, but you make it harder on yourself. You cannot blame your parents for what happened to you. You were 57 years old. I just threw a number out in my mind. I promise you I'm not naming anybody's age. Somebody's like, he knows my age. No, I don't. I just don't know numbers, and I just threw it out there. My ADD threw at me. Oh, I said Randall's age. By the way, whoever sneezed last week, that was the cutest thing. It's like a Disney movie sneeze. It's like, choo, choo. I was like, God, we're not doing it. It's like everybody scares everybody. I hope I don't ever get that when pollen season comes. Sorry, I digress. Can't use your parents as an excuse. Can't use what happened to you as an excuse, but only for so long, because it's on you what you build with your life now. You look at me, you're like, I just got so many bills, I got to pay them. No, it's on you what you do from here. And you can make something happen because there is always hope in rebuilding what God promised you that you missed out on, but you got to grow up. The 400 years weren't on them, but the 40 were. What saved you at 10 years old, what helped you survive your childhood, y'all, at 10, the self-reliance, the independence, The stubbornness that helped you survive your childhood, at 50, it's going to leave you lonely, alone, miserable, and without anybody around you. It saved you at 10. You're still here, but you're a slave to it at 50. You can't blame your childhood. I'm telling you, you get to decide what you do with your scars now. You got them, but you get to decide. See, the 40 years was on them. Tell somebody puberty's over. Oh, we're about to grow. Tell somebody right now, tell them, say, it's time for us all to grow up. And I'm talking to Ben. I'm telling you, this message is for Ben, y'all. This message is for Ben. Y'all know everything in life's a season, right? Life is a series of seasons. You know that, right? Almost everything, maybe everything. Honestly, this life is a season if we truly look at it in light of eternity. Life is a season. But we have this mindset now. I hear it all the time. I hear it quoted. People try to encourage me. They're like, well, it was just for a season. They were just for a season. And we say that trying to grieve and cope with loss and disappointment. That is a terrible perspective. And that perspective will cripple and squelch the growth in your life. It will cause your scars to scare you into becoming a suspicious person. I refuse to be the person that I go through enough things because when you're looking backwards, you're never going to be able to live forward. Everything in life is a season. We got to quit looking at things. Well, they were just for a season. The opportunity, the job, the coworker, it was just for a season. Yeah, everything is. And in every season, every person and everything in your life that was in the season was supposed to be. And what we do is we love to cope with it. Say, well, it was just for a season. They were just for a season. No, everything in life is. Let me just go ahead and tell you. I don't know what it's going to look like. But you will, in your life, have friends that you grow in different directions with. You will have family members. You will have coworkers. You will have churches, possibly. That you grow in different directions. You grow differently. That's okay. We need to quit looking at that and be guarded by it. Everything in life is a season. Don't be bitter about it, and don't let it hold you back. I've had spiritual leaders, y'all, that invested in me that honestly a huge part of who I am right now was because of their investment. But I'm not really connected to them anymore because there came a time, regardless of what the reason, whether I outgrew them or they outgrew me, that we just grew different directions. But their investment is still present in me, even though we're not as present. I have role models in my life in every season that are truly some of the biggest parts of the man, the husband, the father that I am. And they are role models that played big roles in my life. Their investment is still present in me, even though they aren't. Some of the best part of the dad I am comes from my daddy, who y'all know that story was rough. His investment is in me, even though he died a decade ago. We need to quit looking at, you will become a slave to any season that you choose to live in. Whether it's not growing up, you live in last season and never really grow to the next one. Or whether it's looking back and saying, and trying to cope with all the loss that you really never realize life is a big season. Egypt saved Israel in one season and made them a slave in the next. Everything in life is a season. And you know what your perspective needs to be? You need to quit looking at things like it's a season. What's this season? Who's gonna leave me now? Who's gonna hurt me now? You know how you need to look at it? Seasons change. Don't get sad when your kids grow up and go build their own life. It's sad. There's good seasons, bad seasons, but in every season, because life has tons of seasons and they change, in every season your perspective needs to be that seasons change, but the God of the seasons doesn't. You want to change your perspective where you quit living guarded and suspicious and insecure? No matter what happens to you, you don't worship the seasons of God. You worship the God of the seasons. And his love never changes. His love will never lessen for you. He told Joshua, you can be strong and courageous because he said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. You need to change your perspective because you're a slave to things that have been over for years, because your perspective is you're trying to cope with it and deal with it and do something with it. And God is saying, my love is consistent. I won't change. You can be strong. You can move on. You can go to the next level, but you're stuck in last season. Tell somebody puberty's over. Puberty is over. God wants to do so much, but we get to decide what we're gonna do with it. It saved you, but it won't save you. It's all throughout the Bible. King Saul. Y'all know King Saul was the king before David. Matter of fact, he was the first king of Israel. God called King Saul to be Israel. It was the will of God that King Saul be the first king of Israel. But God also removed him. The same God who called Saul to be the king of Israel, also removed him and put David on the throne. You know why that is? It's because Saul lost himself. And I want you to see this, because we don't lose ourselves in bad things first. We're always waiting for somebody to do something stupid. We're always scared. You lose yourself in the good things long before you lose yourself in the stupid, terrible things that you hate yourself for. King Saul didn't change overnight. He lost himself in what God called him to do, be king. He lost himself in the good things. You're trying to protect yourself from all these big mistakes. Listen, long before the righteous things will wreck your life, long before the recklessness will. You hear me? It's the good things. King Saul, it was long before he became the guy that God said, it's over. David's getting on the throne. Saul lost himself in what God called him to do. But you didn't hear me. Because you better start remembering why you got married and why you became a parent. You better start remembering it, because you're going to lose yourself putting pressure on yourself in the good parts of life. That's why your kids can't be your identity. They can be your priority, but they cannot be your identity. That's why your career and calling that can't be your identity. It's got to be your priority, but not your identity. Your spouse can't be your whole world, because your whole world crumbles when they let you down, and they will. Saul lost himself in the honor and privileges that God gave him. And from one season, he was the man God called, and the next season, he was the man that God had to remove. And you better know that don't be surprised one day if your spouse says, I can't do this anymore. Your kids don't even want to talk to you anymore, because it didn't happen overnight. You lose yourselves in the things that you're trying too hard long before you do the dumb things. Tell somebody it saved you, but it won't save you. Because what happens when you put too much into your kids and calling is, if it fails, you feel responsible. Your kids do something stupid, you feel responsible. You fail at your job, your spouse leaves you, you feel responsible. But if it succeeds, you actually think you had more to do with it than you did, because those are God's kids. He just loaned them to you. He created them, every part of them. The Bible says he knew us before he formed us in the womb. They're his kids. Your spouse, God put them on loan to you. Your calling and career, God gave you the gifts and abilities. It's just your job to discover them and work on them. And when you try to take his glory to try to feel a little bit better about yourself, it is going to fail. King Saul lost himself in the very gifts that God gave him, because he was trying to get glory and make himself feel better. There is a difference between doing good things to feel better about yourself and doing good things because you know who you are. It's a big mindset. Tell somebody it saved you, but it won't save you. It's all about seasons, y'all. You better change. If you don't change from season to season, priorities change, things change. What God's called you to do is changed. And if you don't change with it, you become a slave.